Hello YouTube. If you watch Vitruvian Physique, you might have caught his latest installment in which he receives his blood work and he discusses the fact that he has low T and he would like to maybe solve it by going on TRT. Many people sent me messages telling me that I had to make a response video because I had to change his mind. I had to save Igor from himself. And I'm not going to do that because he is his own man. I think it would be very insulting for me to sit there and lecture him about how bad going on TRT is and how terrible he is for even suggesting that. So we're not going to do that today. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to look at the problem as a whole. Because for me personally, I don't know Igor. I watch him once in a while, but he's not my friend. I never spoke to him directly. So I don't have that level of connection. I think that for this video, the you I'm going to utilize is not going to be a you directed at Igor. It's going to be a you directed at everyone who listens, because you very well might find yourself in the same situation he found himself. And that is why I ended up actually triggering the gun and actually making this video, is because I think you can benefit from the message I'm going to share today. If Igor benefits as well, all the better. If you watch Igor, I hope you're doing well. So, the situation that Vitruvian Physique is finding himself in is one that many young men find themselves in nowadays. It's the moment in your life where you receive your blood work back and you realize that you have low T. You have the T levels of an elderly man. This is not a good feeling, because now you feel lesser about yourself and you start to realize, or you start to think, that all of your efforts in the gym are going to be for nothing. Of course, no one actually wants to face that. But I want to pose a simple question. Why exactly did you get tested? I personally never got tested. Where is that new craze coming from? Why is everyone obsessed about their T levels nowadays? Well, I think the answer is fairly obvious. It's because of PED users. PED users are the ones who brought that topic on the table. People didn't used to care back in the days. You just trained and looked the way you looked. Hormones were never discussed, and nowadays they are, and they're not just discussed. People obsess over them. I understand why drug users obsess over them, because it's their entire life. But us? Why did it transfer to us? Why did they contaminate us? Well, it's because I think that the issue of T levels is mainly an issue of PED users that again got transferred onto us, and now we have to deal with the consequences that Igor had to deal with, because he found himself again sponsored by a clinic that helps and allows men to check their levels. Got them checked the first time, was very happy because he saw he had high T, was gloating about it because of course you have high T, it means you're very anabolic, you're a Chad, you're an alpha male. And then he realized after retesting them that his T levels were not as good as he once thought. All of which I think could have been avoided by just not checking your T levels. I mean, at the end of the day, what difference does it make? Because I also want to point out the fact that low T or high T, Igor still looks tremendous. So what exactly triggered that need to check? Well, it's what I already explained. It's that obsession. We are now all obsessed with T levels. So even if everything is going good in your life, you're going to still get them checked, and you're going to get good or bad news, and it's going to completely change the way you look at yourself. It might actually make you look down on yourself, which is now happening again with Igor. But the crazy thing again is that he looks great. I'll put some pictures and images of Igor so that you realize what I'm talking about. This is a guy who's jacked, buff, and shredded. And even someone like him now feels bad about himself because he has low T. What exactly is it going to do to you if you get checked? If you actually go and you go through his sponsor and you get your blood work level checked and you realize you have low T? Well, I think that what's going to happen is you'll finally be able to pinpoint the reason why you are so small, you are so frail, you don't have the body you want. Now you have an external factor that in reality is an internal factor because it's in you that explains all of your issues in life. And this is where I have a problem, because it's a thing that is now very popular amongst young men, where they're going to get their T levels back, realize they're low, and say, okay, here is my problem. If I fix this via TRT, all of my issues are going to go away and I'm going to be all good. Because what other reason would you have to get your T levels checked? Again, what exactly do you expect from the results? If you get them back and they're low, you're just gonna start training and eating healthy now? You needed to see that your T levels were low to actually take that step? I don't think so. I think that many people who take that step of getting tested in the first place do so because they want an excuse. They want a reason to justify why they should be put on TRT. Even though it could very well be that if they never got them checked in the first place and just did things properly, they would have been able to get them up without actually having to resort to such things. But in this situation for Igor, it's not what's going on, right? You could tell me, well, Igor has been training for a long time, longer than you in age. He knows what he's talking about. He's big. So for him, clearly, it's not that problem. Well, yeah, but keep in mind that I'm also talking to you right now, because many of Igor's subscribers are also not at his level, but they're going to follow the same train of thought that he follows. And because he offers the ability to get blood work done through his sponsors, guess what's going on? Lots of young men are going to fall for the same trap. Because keep in mind that everything I'm sharing right now, Igor already knows. He knows that to boost your T levels, you don't need to do any hocus pocus magic. It's very simple stuff. It's a clean diet, lots of sleep, no stress, and a rigorous training regimen for years and years and years. He knows all of these things. And yet, for some reason, in this situation, he thinks it doesn't apply to him. Because if you listen to him speak, he's clearly pushing all of that aside and saying, well, it's not my case, right? I'm not someone who has to look at it. But right afterwards, he explains and he gives reasons why his T levels might not be as high as he wants them to be. So this is what has me puzzled, because it feels to me like I'm looking at someone with cognitive dissonance. Again, no offense to Igor, but it's striking that he explains by A plus B why his T levels are low, and then he just brushes that aside and says, well, I might give it a try for 3 or 5 months, and if it doesn't work, I'll do TRT. That looks to me like someone who already decided they're going to do TRT and is just going to sort of put in a half effort for the rest of the stuff. And what exactly is the rest of the stuff? What did Igor point out as the potential reason for his low testosterone levels? Well, in his case, it was malnutrition. Why would someone who could be described as an athlete would be malnourished? How is it possible? Well, the answer is very simple. He just got done with a prep. Bodybuilding is not the healthiest sport. I would even go as far as to say it's a horrible sport for health. Pro bodybuilding, of course, but even natural bodybuilding, because you go down to such low body fat levels that all of your hormonal profile is out of whack. You dehydrate yourself. You have to deplete yourself of very important macro and micronutrients, none of which is good for you. Your body is never going to reward it by making you more anabolic. You are just going to look good on stage, but inside you look terrible. And I want to stop here for a second. This is not an attack on Igor, it's more an attack on what we call natural bodybuilding. Guys on stage wearing thongs who are 6% body fat. Isn't that just pro bodybuilding without the hormones? Aren't we just copying those big guys? What happened to real natural bodybuilding? Look back to when it all started, 100 years ago. None of the guys were shredded. None of the guys were pumping up before. None of the guys were wearing tan. It was just dudes on stage by themselves showing off the result of their hard work. All of them were between 10 to 16, sometimes 18% body fat, and they all looked tremendous. What exactly might have happened for us to completely remove that from the forefront and be left with what we have nowadays? Well, once again, I'm going to point to you at PED users, because the 50s and 60s brought back pro bodybuilding, or actually just made pro bodybuilding emerge from the depth of the abyss, and they took the forefront. They started running the show. And when someone runs the show, what do you do if you want to exist? Well, you just copy them. This is why natural bodybuilding is fucked as a practice. It's like the little leagues. Who is interested in that? Well, people like Igor, because of course, if you want to compete, you're going to have to follow these standards. But these standards are the reason why people have low T. People are going to end up with these low hormonal profiles. It's because the practice in itself is not proper for naturals. We must turn our backs to it. I'm not going to spend too much time talking about that because Igor knows it. He says it, that he has been eating like rice cakes. He even says, I haven't been eating like a human. Yeah, that's the problem. If he had stayed within a healthy body fat, he would have never have to deal with low hormonal profile. Of course, this is an hypothesis, but this is personally what I believe. And yet, I do think that the realization of that has yet to strike him. And it has yet to strike a lot of young men, because lots of young men also want to be shredded. They want to stay lean year round. And the result of that is they sabotage their progression, they sabotage their health, but they don't know why. Because they've been told it was healthy. Oh yeah, get shredded, bro, be a sick cunt, bro. Super good for your health. No, these are not the standards that we actually need. But the standards that we are actually stuck with nowadays are the reason why we have to deal with that type of things. You see, in Igor's case, it is also these standards that he had to follow to compete that led him to his current situation. And beyond that, it's also the same standards that have him look outside of himself and say, okay, my T levels are bad. Why? Well, because we are bombarded with images and examples of men who have super high tests through unnatural means, and now we try to compare ourselves to that. And again, I question the logic of it all because Igor himself said it in the video. At some point, he says that between naturals, the difference in T levels is minimal. It barely makes a difference. Why? Because we're all pretty much cut from the same cloth. Yes, there are freaks, but it doesn't really matter. What matters, however, is the difference between unnatural and natural, because people who are not natty have 3-4 times the amount of hormones that you produce steadily throughout the day. And these are the guys running the show. These are the guys making the standard. Even someone like Igor, who looks again like a demigod, is not happy with his physique, and he's going to look at his test levels and say, okay, that's the problem. No, the problem is the fucked up standards and the polluted standards that we have to deal with nowadays. Because let me get real for a second here. Igor is 30. He's not at an age where a dip in hormonal profile is legitimate or explained by science, right? Unless you look at, again, studies who are highly biased and for some reason consider the teenage years as the peak of the male of the male life and the male prime. Most males peak in their 40s. 30s, you are far from that. Why did we start to believe that we fall from grace at 30? Well, call me crazy, call me cuckoo. I think it's again because of PED users. It's because, again, we have to deal with these crazy standards. We are unable to match them. You look at an 18-year-old who's twice your size and you think, it might be because I'm aging out of my prime. Wrong. You're natural. Your prime is when you've put in 20 years, when you've accumulated tonnage. Hormonal levels are almost irrelevant to us, not completely, but if you're in the normal range or slightly below, you are fine. But the problem, and this is why I made this video, I would have never made it if I didn't sense it in him. The problem is that when you listen to Igor talk about TRT, there's a glimmer in his eyes. There's a desire in his voice. He wants that shit. And why wouldn't he want it? When you see all of these examples of guys who jumped on TRT for health reasons and look tremendously around, lean, with barely any efforts put in, who wouldn't want to do that? Because on top of that, you don't have the stigma of PEDs. You're not really doing PEDs, you're just doing TRT. It's for health, bro. It comes from a clinic with doctors. This is the problem. All of that is just an excuse. And I sense and I feel like in Igor's case, it is that as well. But keep in mind that this is someone who talks to an audience. If he was just some dude somewhere in a shack, I mean, by all means, pin trends straight into your asshole. No one is going to be impacted. But in this case, think about the influence that he has. Think about what it does to people. When you look at a natural who's in his 30s, he's still young, far away from his prime, who contemplates TRT as the last thing he can do to improve and to save his hormonal profile, you just blackpill an entire generation of people. Because why exactly would they put in the work? You just show the example of someone who did put in the work for 15 years and eventually realized it was all for nothing, and to be able to go further, he's going to have to do drugs. The logic reaction here is to say, well, fuck that. I'm just going to jump on TRT right away. I'm not going to waste my time because I'm going to jump on TRT regardless. This is why you see all of these teenagers on TRT. It's because this is the message that they have in their head. And I'm afraid that in Igor's situation, he's doing the same thing. He is lying to himself to justify the use of TRT. He calls himself a potential candidate. Like, oh yeah, I'm 30, I'm a candidate, it's legitimate for me to do TRT. Yeah, you're a candidate in the fucked up way that these youth clinics promote. Again, we're going back to standards. Of course, a youth clinic would try to make the candidates as young as possible. They would try to expand the limitations. Why? Money. They're not in this for health, they're in this to sell TRT to people. They sell TRT to teenagers. You just have to show up with a script from your doctor and a blood work that attests that you have low T, and you will be prescribed it as long as you can pay. You can fake low T. You can manipulate your hormonal levels to have low T to be prescribed TRT. It is doable. And in this case, I'm sorry to say it, it's what he did. When you sabotage yourself by dieting down to such low levels that you have the T levels of an 80-year-old, no duh, you're going to have low T. Are you really going to use that as an excuse to then jump on it? Keep in mind that, and I'm not going to spend too much time on it because I've made plenty of videos about TRT, it's in the description. Your body giving you low T is a sign you're doing something wrong. It's your body saying, hey, I'm sort of trying to survive here and you're giving me no nutrients at all. So we're going to sort of lower down the T levels and your ability to be anabolic. And then when you feed me properly, I might actually restore it. What do you think happens when someone who is in that situation does TRT? You're not fixing the problem. Now you're just putting a band-aid on a wound that is starting to actually infect. This is not the proper way. But again, lots of teenagers are going to hear Igor say that and they'll think, okay, well, if he does TRT because he has low T, why wouldn't I do it? Most teenagers nowadays have low T. Why? They play video games, they eat fast food, they barely work out. Of course you have low T. You have the lifestyle of a worm. Why would you have high T? I guarantee you that if I could get my T levels tested when I was 17, I was below normal range, way below. I had the T levels of an 80-year-old. But I never got them tested. And if I got them tested nowadays, I'm sure I'm middle range or high range. Why? Because I never actually used it as an excuse. I fixed the environment around me. Igor knows it's the environment, but he still wants that sweet, sweet TRT. And again, I don't blame him. It sounds very attractive, but in this case, it is going to be an appeal to the audience. I think that this is a terrible message to promote. Once again, when you have young people in your audience, this is not something you can allow yourself to do. I know I'm preachy right now, but this is something I believe. You have people who look up to you, you have a responsibility towards them. Igor, I'm not his mama, but he is your mama. If you watch him, I believe that. I don't like the parasocial, but I do believe in that connection. And this is why there was pushback in his comments, something that he noticed because he made a comment and he pinned it about him where he told people, hey, I see many people who tell me to not jump on TRT. I've already explained to you that I know what I'm doing, etc. Igor, the reason why these people are doing that is because they're sensing what I sensed, and that is that you want to jump on TRT. They watched your video like I watched your video. What they don't want is they don't want their hero to go to the dark side. And yes, this sounds very Manichaean, but it's for a reason. It's because these people look up to you. You are their example. They think to themselves, okay, all of these guys on TikTok and Instagram tell me to do drugs indirectly, but Igor is not taking drugs. Igor is natural. So if I put in the work at his age, I'm going to have as good of a physique, if not better. That's what they think. This is why they were upset when they heard about it. Because they think and they understand perfectly that if you renounce, chances are they're going to renounce as well. Is it something that you want to inflict on themselves? If someone like you quits, Igor, many people are going to quit. This is the situation we're dealing with nowadays in this community. We are the last frontier. We are the last remnant of health and of sanity on this platform. If you're a teenager and you are on any amount of social media, you are literally bombarded with PD users telling you that you should do drugs. Do drugs. Teenagers on drugs that are magnificent, they're big, that capped shoulders, six-pack, they get the girls, they get the sponsorship. All of that is incredibly attractive to the teenage brain. This is the TRT propaganda that is being pushed everywhere. You even have guys nowadays who, again, pretend to be in it for the health of the teens, who tell you that TRT is natural. TRT is the next step in the evolution. Our T levels are low nowadays because of the environment and the modern world, so we have no choice. And the next big thing for men is going that we're all going to be on TRT and we're all going to be alpha males and we're all going to be healthy. That's bullshit. This is bullshit transhumanism, and it's being pushed by people who make a benefit and make a profit off of selling that type of supplements, off of selling that type of services, like the blood work testing service that Igor is sponsored by. I'm not saying he's participating, but he sure as hell apparently is in line with these types, because I personally am directly opposed to it. The only thing that this TRT propaganda does is it robs young men of their potential that they will never be able to actually accomplish. Igor knows it. He has a friend, he speaks about it at the end of the video, that went on TRT and regretted it. And guess what? the friend was also competing in natural bodybuilding. And after a show, when he felt horrendous because his T levels tanked, he jumped on TRT. Ain't that the stupidest shit you've ever heard in your life? You sabotage your own hormonal profile and then you turn around and you say, my body is not doing what I want. I'm going to inject myself. What the fuck is wrong with you? This is not natural bodybuilding. Last I checked, a natural bodybuilder is someone who is healthy, big, jacked, lean all the time. You don't have to have striated glutes to be a natural bodybuilder. This is just stupid and many people find it out way too late. And so this is why it is up to us naturals to share that message of persistence and of staying away from drugs. Remember that to create a fake natty, a drugged up influencer, it only takes a syringe and a fool. That's all it takes. This is the reason why they're multiplying so fast and why they're everywhere. But to create a natural influencer, someone who gives good advice, it takes a decade, hard work, and dedication. This is why there's almost none of us left. This is why I'm getting pissed off and heated. It's because I feel like we're about to lose a very important actor in the game. We're about to lose Igor. And I know he is apparently trying to stay away from TRT. But again, I'm afraid that all of that is just a front and we're going to get the sad news in 6 months that he's jumping on it, he's jumping on TRT, and we'll lose another one. Because at this point, his advice will not be receivable anymore because he will be on TRT, aka legal PEDs. You won't fool anyone. If your physique evolves rapidly, people will know it's because of the TRT. Do you think they will be able to look up to you at this point? I think that they won't. And if they do, it's because you will be lying to them. So at this point, it's a lose-lose situation. I'm going to conclude with this. I don't know Igor. So this is a weird video for me to even make because he might chime in the comments and tell me that I'm reading way into it. But what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to do prevention, actual prevention. Because I know that Igor is not a fool, but he is looking towards people in the community like More Plates, More Dates who are. In the sense that I believe More Plates, More Dates to be incredibly intelligent and a talented businessman, but he's not in our camp. He's not fighting for the natties. He's fighting to make money. He targets naturals. He sells test boosters for fuck's sake. And Igor even references test booster as a solution for his low T. Igor, you know it's bullshit. You know boron is not going to solve your problems. Your problems is the standards and the practices you apply to yourself. Take your supplements if you want, but don't use it as an excuse to not put in the work on the side. You know the amount of young teens who get scammed by More Plates, More Dates, who buy his supplements and think they're going to get huge off of it? A ton, the majority of them. You know what this does to them? It blackpills them because now they're going to hyper-focus on their T levels, which is something that's going to make them use their mommy and daddy credit card to buy more supplements, and they're not going to do the one thing that is actually important for natural lifters, and that is to actually train. Train is what is going to boost your T levels, not all of these supplements, and certainly not test-boosting supplements that are full of garbage. The solution is not a pill and it's not TRT, it's not for you and it's not for Igor. And I hope that for his sake and for his audience's sake, he's going to realize that. Whether he watches this video or not, I hope he's going to come to that conclusion. And if he does, well, there'll be one more guy that will be able to keep trusting, keep working with, and keep looking up towards. And that will be the right choice for everyone involved in this situation. That will be the right choice. But at the end of the day, be it for Igor or be it for you, I can't make these choices for you. The only thing I can tell you is try to think, try to look at the people who profit from your sadness and from your low T, and then after that, come to logical conclusions. I have so many people who reached out to me in my comments after my TRT video saying, hey, thank you for actually saying that I was about to do TRT. I gave it 6 months. Like Igor is saying, I put all of the work in and I got my blood work back and all of my blood work is good. This is the way. 6 months. Maybe if you have a terrible lifestyle, a year, 2 years. Keep pushing, keep trying. Small increases is all it takes. Just don't let the sirens of TRT propagandists actually get to you. This is my message to Igor. This is my message to all of my brothers watching this channel. Put in the work, stay natural, and at the end of the day, you will find that this is always the best solution. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.